Pure. Pure is with a W when you are stolen by the world from the womb of your mother. They forget to mention that when you arrive, you will be cast into a place where the color of your skin will affect the kind of life you live. Pure. Pure is what they claim you to be before they stuff ideas of how you should form your views on the differences among the human race. That purity is soon erased once you realize that you are not like everyone else. Reality kicks in, and it tells you that you are to be perceived as less valuable than someone of the Caucasian descent. After you have been stripped of your innocence, you soon realize who you are, where your family comes from, and how the past will affect you. For some, the road to racial identity may be a tough one, yet it is a road that must be traveled in order to gain true knowledge of who you are. So, growing up, it took me some time to realize I was different. I had a heart of gold, and I still grasped onto any little bit of innocence I had left. Growing up in my household, I was never taught to hate. I was only taught to love, and to love everyone for who they are and what they may look like, and that, what makes us different is our personalities, and what makes us different is what makes us beautiful. So I was taught just to love. I didn't realize I was different until about the second grade. I remember there was this boy in my class that I had the biggest crush on, but he just so happened to be white. And I remember thinking to myself, that'll never happen, Teeazha. It won't happen. And you may ask, why did you think that? You were so young. Well, when I turned on the TV, or when I flipped through a magazine, or when I was browsing the internet, you didn't see black and white people together. Or if you did, you didn't see it too often. And I also remember, just thinking that I don't see black and white people together in my everyday life. And if I did see it, I would always hear some kind of smart remarks behind it or something negative, and I didn't understand why. Where I grew up, there were kids from all different kind of racial backgrounds. We had the Asian kids, we had the Hispanic kids, the black kids, the white kids, and we were kind of all on one accord. We were all in unison, Only thing we were worried about was going outside to ride our scooters or to play double dutch or foursquare or, the games that are played at these schools. So my racial identity didn't hit me too hard until I was uprooted from my diverse community due to some unforeseen circumstances. My mother and I, we had to move in with my aunt. But my aunt just so happened to live in a very suburban area where there was nothing but white people. I mean, at the time, I didn't notice this, but, looking back on it, it was a tough transition. I remember in about the third grade, my mother enrolled me into a school in that area. And on my first day, I'm so excited. I got my backpack on. I'm ready to meet some new friends. I'm ready to meet a new teacher, a new classroom. It was all so exciting to me because everything was so new. But I was in for a very rude awakening. I remember being on the playground. And, in my neighborhood, when there's a new kid, you're like, hey, what's up? Be my friend. And you wanted to play with that person. You wanted to get to know that person. But at this school, things were different. I noticed that no one was talking to me. No one was asking me to play. No one was asking me to help them jump rope or anything like that. And I just remember feeling so abandoned, like an outcast. But I remember saying, well, maybe it is because I'm the new kid. Maybe these kids aren't like the kids on my block. So I still held on to a little bit of hope. I said, once I get into the classroom, maybe it'll be different. But sadly, I was one of 2 African American children in that classroom. And I remember being ignored, like I didn't exist. Or when I would raise my hand, it was, oh, call on someone else. It was never me. I never got the chance to shine. And I remember my teacher, who was white, being so nasty to me. And I did not understand this because where I come from, education is important. And my education was something that I never played around with. So I didn't understand why this teacher was so mean to me. And so many days, after many long days, I would go home crying to my mother, begging her to move back to our old neighborhood, telling her that this teacher is so mean to me and that, she made me feel like I didn't exist. And of course my mother was like, okay, let me meet with this teacher. Soon after meeting with the teacher, she's like, oh no, we got to get out of here. She's like, we ended up moving back to a diverse neighborhood because she felt that that was the only chance I had at gaining a fair education. So growing up, I did have a lot of racial issues that helped shape me to become who I was. I was stripped of my innocence after these, incidents. And because of these things that I went through, my mother always made sure to preach to me, stand tall, Teeazha. Walk tall, Teeazha. Don't let them see you with your head down. Teeazha, you have to work twice as hard to get what they've got. Because not only are you black, you are a woman. So, coming into college, I had a pretty good idea of who I was. But it took me some time to really understand my history, simply because growing up, for some reason, I always clinged to my black side. That's all I knew. I knew black culture. I knew black music. I knew, anything that had to do with black. I found myself, soaking in like a sponge because that's all I knew. For the longest time, I thought I was black and Mexican. And when I turned about 12, I learned, Teeazha, no, you're not Mexican. You're black and Salvadorian. The reason why it took me so long to realize this is because my father was never around growing up. Well, he was around, but he was in and out. So after I kind of found this out, I tried to do a little research here and there about, El Salvador and the people and their culture and their language and everything like that. But it wasn't until I enrolled in this class when I realized, no, honey, you've got to dig a little deeper. So I decided for my historical paper that I would focus on 2 women that I didn't know so much about. One of them happened to be Septima Clark, and she was an educator and an activist. During some rough times, when racial tension was high, she made it her job to educate black people so they could learn how to vote, so they could learn how to use their voices, and so that they could just be educated. And, to Septima, education was power, and I think that's a beautiful thing because that's something that's always been preached to me and something that I've learned to take in as a personal moral and belief. Another woman that I decided to focus on was Melinda Montez. She was the second in command of the FMLN political party in El Salvador. So she was a huge activist for the rights of the people. She fought for people's rights. And here you have it, this woman leading this huge political party, but you never hear her story, as well as Septima's. So I made it my duty to understand who these women were because they affect who I am. They're a part of my history and they're a part of my past. I found a little bit of myself in each of these women. And to me, that was a beautiful thing. And so throughout this whole process of finding out who I am, I come to realize that this beautiful skin of mine is no longer a curse. It's a blessing. It's a badge of honor. It tells me that, no, I'm not like everyone else, but that's beautiful because that's what makes me who I am. So with that being said, I'll always be just Teeazha. I'll always be this girl with a heart of gold who still tries to hold on to any hope that one day the place that I live won't be so focused on what the color of your skin looks like. So with that, I hope you take into consideration that everyone is beautiful and that everyone is human.